Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Breakfast Bankroll for Monday, March 13th, 2023. You survived the madness for this past weekend, Selection Sunday, and now it's Monday, and what better way to start our week when the one and only BTB from Beatin' the Bookie, as we're going to get everyone set for what transpired this past weekend, maybe a look ahead to the brackets, the bracket busters, some thoughts on where Rob has some teams moving forward, maybe a few upset specials, talk a little NHL. We're just going to talk and get himself set up as he and our producer Kiefer and family are all heading to Vegas on Wednesday for the start of March Madness. But we're blessed and honored for our weekly appearance with the one and only Mr. BTB.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning to everybody out there on this Monday morning. March Madness, almost Eve, can't wait. Can't wait to get out to Vegas and, go full degenerate.
Past weekend, a lot of the favorites came running home, the Purdue's of the world, the Alabamas of the world, some key injuries with UCLA, with Houston. Arizona knocks off UCLA Saturday night for the Pac-12. Houston loses to Memphis yesterday. Didn't affect with Purdue winning. UCLA was going to get a 2 anyways. Houston still gets their number 1 seed. Alabama, the true number 1 leading into this tournament. Any thoughts over the weekend? What transpired?
Yeah, I don't really, I haven't been really huge on Houston. Like they're almost like the Gonzaga of Texas almost. I feel like that conference, it's tough to get ready for, playing teams in the SEC and, teams in the ACC and stuff when you're playing in, their conference. So I just, I said it all year, Houston, they go on these shooting slumps. They go on these scoring slumps. They remind me of Virginia a few years ago when they lost as a 1 seed. When everything's clicking, they're playing great. But, when they can't shoot, your defense can only save you so many times, right? Sooner or later, good shooting beats good defense, right? So sooner or later, a team is going to come against you, and if they shoot well, you could be in trouble if you don't. So I think Houston, they're in trouble, on the offensive end, as we saw last night. They got down big, and they could never really come back, right? They mounted one comeback, and they just couldn't quite get there. So I think Houston's in trouble. Factor that with Mattress Mac also bet on them also, so they're probably dead. The world's biggest mush, when he backs you, you pretty much have no chance, like TCU in the national championship game. So I was surprised, like Creighton getting a 6 seed, 12 or 13 losses on the year. They had lost 6 in a row, and Xavier, a 3 seed. I thought the Big East, they gave the Big East a lot more respect than I thought they would. So that was kind of surprising right there. But besides that, I think there's a lot of teams that are on upset alert, for this first round. So like Duke, for example. If Oral Roberts, they're one of the best offensive teams in the country. If they get hot, they can easily beat Duke. I think this tournament we're going to see a lot of those upsets. I think we definitely have the potential to see a crazy wide open tournament, because it's pretty wide open. Any team there's probably 20 teams that could win it all, right? There's some teams like Baylor that are going into March Madness, flailing, right? Baylor, Creighton, a lot of these teams are going into March Madness flailing. So, we'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting for sure. And I think we'll definitely see a lot of upsets.
I've been saying for the last handful of weeks the same thing. And I've also added that I think when we're sitting here talking about Final Four, we'll probably see number ones and number two and maybe a number 4 or 5. Maybe one team sneaks through the cracks. The two teams I personally have not been able to wrap my head around is Kansas, the defending champs, and now the question mark, obviously, is Bill Self going to be on the sidelines? He had a couple stints put in over the weekend. And Purdue, and I'm not high on the bench. They got the 7-4, Edie, whatever you want to call him, at center. I haven't been able to wrap my head around those two yet. They keep winning. I know you've talked here about Kansas. Still pretty high on Kansas, and your thoughts on Purdue?
Yeah, I mean, I think they said Bill Self would be back for the tournament, so that's not really a concern there for me. My thoughts on Purdue is, they're pretty much just Zach Edey, right? They scored 60-something points against Penn State, and he scored 30. So if you shut him down, or if he gets into foul trouble, they're done, right? Like, if a team gets him in foul trouble, Purdue is finished, right? Because he's essentially their entire team, 50% of their scoring against Penn State. I was very unimpressed with the Big Ten tournament. A lot of bum teams, right? Like Penn State's all right, but they make it to the final. Purdue's up, I think, 14 with a few minutes left. Penn State comes all the way back, nearly tied it at the end. They actually had a chance to win it at the end. Ohio State made a run to the semifinals, and they were like, Ohio State was like 11-13-17 on the year, 13-18 on the year. So really wasn't impressed with the Big Ten. And I've been saying that the entire season. They're the only team last year that got 9 teams in, and the only team ever that got 9 teams in that didn't have one reach the Elite 8. People were saying they were going to get 10 teams in this year. They ended up getting 8. We saw, Wisconsin and Michigan both fail to make it. And a lot of people thought Rutgers was going to make it, and Rutgers got, left out. So that was pretty surprising. But, I'm just sick of the it just seems like the committee, they just select these off just Ken Palm's rankings, right? That's basically it, right? That everyone always justifies a bad pick where it's like, oh, Ken Palm has him 13th. Like it's like the guy's the final say on all things, sport. If he was so good, he would be a billionaire betting his picks, right? So a few things were surprising with seeds, but yeah, I mean, I think this is wide open. The Big Ten, they don't really impress me. I don't think the national champion's going to come from the Big Ten. I don't think Purdue is very good. I thought UCLA should have been a 1. I think UCLA has played great this season. They did lose to Arizona, but they played very poorly, and they still should have won the game. So I like UCLA with their experience. But my favorite the entire year has been Kansas, so I think they get Bill Self back. We got him at 14-1. So I definitely, I like Kansas. I definitely wouldn't bet Houston at 5-1 right now. No shot. So it's wide open. I mean, if there's ever a year for Gonzaga, a team like Gonzaga, right? Like Gonzaga finished the year streaking. If there's ever a year for Gonzaga to win it, it's this year. Because there's no Baylor team that beat them a few years ago that was just unstoppable, right? Nobody's in their way. I could see a team like Gonzaga getting hot and winning it all. So I actually saw, I think a couple people picked Gonzaga yesterday on CBS's show. I saw Jay Wright picked Kansas to win. So obviously I respect Jay Wright. Obviously he's one of the greatest college coaches ever. So I like that he picked Kansas to win. But we could have a very chalky Final Four, or we could just see total craziness. So I think we're going to see a lot of upsets. I'm not sure with the top seeds, but I think anyone from a 3 seed to lower is could be in trouble. So I see a lot of upsets happening, and I'm just looking forward to it.
The year that no one's talking about the Zags, they're flying out of the radar. The last couple of years they were the trendy, sexy pick. I mean, they were unstoppable. And then you talk about their conference play and who they play, and they do that with a lot of teams. Who have these teams played? The St. Mary's team is just hanging around there. They got a 5 seed, I think, and they're just sitting there hanging around. I respect the Zags. I think this could be the year. Again, right under that radar. We'll have a lot of upsets, I think, in the first weekend. I think we'll have a handful of upsets the start of the second weekend. But I think when the dust settles, we're going to see the Kansases of the world, the UCLAs, potentially the Houstons. I got to ask you this. You talked about the Big East. I got to say hats off to Marquette. Hats off to Shaka. The amazing run. UConn couldn't throw it in the ocean the last 6.5 minutes. I've talked all year about UConn, 14-0, number 2 in the country. I was like, everyone pump the brakes here. They have those offensive mental lapses. They're going to go as far as Jordan Hawkins takes them. I think that's my take on them. Obviously, they have other pieces with Sanogo and stuff. I find it comical, though. They open up 10-point favorites against Iona. Last year, I was in Vegas at the MGM with Dave Sharapan, Julian Edlow, Matt Peralt. No one in Vegas talked about New Mexico State. They talked about every other team. Could Iona and Rick Pitino, I will say this right now, 10:23 a.m., March 13th, he will be the next coach of St. John's if he wants it. What's your thoughts on Iona and UConn potentially going on in this stance?
Look, UConn has the same problems as Houston. Sometimes they can't score, right? They go on long scoring droughts. I mean, I had the over in that game, 148, and I'm thinking I actually went to see that Creed 3 movie. And I'm sitting in the movie and I'm looking at the score and I'm saying, 70-68 with 4 minutes left, 10 more points, easy winner. No points the rest of the game. That's in a championship game like that. That's pretty insane to see. So that was pretty shocking. Rick Pitino. I mean, the guy's a great coach. Iona. Their offense can fly. All of his team's offenses. They're very efficient. So. Look, if Iona plays well and they shoot threes and they hit 60% of their shots, I mean, they can be in trouble, right? They're like a better version of St. Peter's, right? Better coached from last year, right? So it would not surprise me. St. John's, I mean, I've heard his name linked to a few jobs, right? So that would be a great hire for St. John's for sure. I mean, that's one of the, they have one of the richest, richest areas to, recruit from in New York City. They always get a lot of those New York City Hoopers to come to St. John's. So I think that would be a great hire for them. But in the meantime, Iona is definitely a dangerous team in the tournament. We've seen them beat good teams before, and he's obviously one of the greatest coaches of all time. So regardless of the strippers or whatever, whatever it takes to win, he's one of those guys. So I definitely think, Iona's got a shot. There's a lot of tough draws, right? Like the Hurricanes, they drew Drake, right? The Hurricanes, we played Duke. We lost to Duke by a few points on Saturday. Or Friday night, we lost our starting center in the first minute of the game, Omer, and he's one of the best players on the team. So that was a tough loss with the Hurricanes. If they don't get him back, for the first round, I think they can be in trouble against Drake. But there's a lot of those scrappy, tough matchups in the first round, and like I said, a lot of teams are on upset alert. So, like I said, I could easily see Duke losing to Oral Roberts, just because if Oral Roberts gets hot and Duke can't score, that's a recipe for disaster. I could see Virginia losing in the first round, right? There's a lot of teams that can lose in the first round, and UConn's one of them. So it'll be interesting. Always expect the unexpected. I'm sure we'll see something crazy that we could have seen coming, that we'll be talking about next week. So I'm just looking forward to the craziness.
You'll be live in Vegas with for a bunch of our colleagues and friends out there. Before we transition, how do you approach, especially the first weekend? You have Kansas in tow at 14-1. I don't know if you have any other futures. Do you just stick to the same recipe that got you to this point, or do you change up because it's now one and done? Someone's got to win 6 in a row. There's only going to be one team cutting them down. But do you look into making the Final Four and potential hedge out, or is it just business as usual?
Yeah, I'll just go, game by game. One future that I might take a look at, like I said, is Gonzaga. I think on DraftKings they're like 18-1. They got to come out of Kansas's. They got to come out of the West, and what's crazy is we could see, the West. We could potentially see a Gonzaga St. Mary's in the West, right? To win the West. So, I don't think that'll happen. Gonzaga. I like Gonzaga against Grand Canyon. I like them against TCU or the Arizona State Nevada winner. And then, Gonzaga, UCLA, I like UCLA, but, they lost, a key injury. So they're susceptible there. So I think Gonzaga could, get to the Sweet 16 against the UCLA. I think they can beat UCLA. And then, get to the Elite Eight against the, like a Kansas, they would probably be up against or UConn. But yeah, I think all these teams that Gonzaga has in their way are definitely beatable. If Gonzaga gets hot, Gonzaga can play with anybody, and when they get hot, they're piping hot, right? And in Gonzaga, they've gotten better as the year went on, right? I haven't been big on Gonzaga this year, but they've gotten better as the year has gone on. They wiped the floor with St. Mary's in that championship game. The -2 was a total gift in that game. So I think if Gonzaga gets there, I would have Gonzaga over Purdue, because Gonzaga's got, a bunch of parts. And I think Zach Edey is a good center, but, Timmy is more experienced, and, he's tricky, like a tricky old man in the gym, right? So I think, Gonzaga definitely has all the tools to get there. So if there's one other future I'll be playing besides Kansas, it's Gonzaga. And they both come out of the same, the West. So basically if you give me those teams in the West, I think you have a pretty good shot of making the Final Four. So I'll probably be taking the Zags added. So.
Have you dived in or dabbled, or you or Jesse touched any of the WBC yet?
No, not at all. Maybe Jesse has. I haven't at all. It doesn't really interest me. You look. I looked for a second the other day, and I saw Trace Thompson's playing for Great Britain. I doubt he's ever even been to Great Britain. So, half of Great Britain's roster was from the United States. But I guess Bahamas has players on Great Britain because it's a, British colony from, back in the day. So it's a Commonwealth. But the WBC does not really do it for me at all. It's just like they're trying to make it like the World Cup. But it does not do it for me at all. Like, I haven't even watched 1 minute of it. So, and I won't watch a minute. So, it just does not do it for me. I have literally zero interest in it. It's just like a fashionable tournament, right? But it does not do anything for me. I can appreciate how a lot of these stars are playing in it and stuff. That they seem to be taking it seriously and stuff. But I just can't. I just can't take it seriously, and I just can't watch. Like, it's almost like exhibition baseball, right? I don't have all this pride where I'm like, America baseball, let's go. Like, it's not one of, just doesn't do it for me. So I have not bet it. I have not watched it, and I probably won't.
PGA this past weekend, it's kind of comical. This is just how it works. I'm in 2 one-and-done tournaments nationwide, and the last 2 weeks I split up. 2 weeks ago had Scotty Scheffler. Last week had Scotty Scheffler, and of course Scotty Scheffler has a great weekend and wins the TPC. Thoughts on what transpired at the TPC this weekend?
I mean, it's Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm, and the next golfer after them is it's a big gap, right? It's just those two, and Scotty Scheffler is like doing. I said last night, basically, Scotty Scheffler's turned into Tiger Woods, right? I mean, he's up there. He's up there in the final, top 5 every week, seemingly, right? So the guy is just a total machine. He's a nice guy. The PGA could not ask for a nicer guy to be the face of their tour, right? He's doing stuff with people with MS after and stuff, and doing a lot of stuff for people with special needs and stuff. I mean, he's a very religious guy. His caddy, a very nice guy also. If you follow him on TikTok and stuff, he's very nice. Just a guy who basically says all the right things, does all the right things. You don't have to worry about Scotty Scheffler. He's a good face of the PGA Tour, right? The PGA Tour doesn't have to worry about Scotty Scheffler banging Shoney's waitresses, right, in the parking lot at the local Shoney's, right? They don't have to worry about Scotty Scheffler dropping his girlfriend off at the airport, telling her she's going on a vacation, and saying, you can't come back to my house, right? They don't have to worry about that stuff. So I think the PGA found their next superstar for the next 10 years. He reminds me of everything that Jordan Spieth was supposed to be, right? Like, this was Jordan Spieth 6 years ago, right? The next Tiger Woods. I think that's Scotty Scheffler, and I think him and John Rahm will be battling for a decade to come, right? Those guys are just so far ahead of everybody when they're on their game. But Scotty Scheffler, he's just so cool, calm, and collected. I mean, nothing phases him, it seems like. We've seen him play poorly a couple final rounds, but very rarely. He's just so good. He's so well-rounded. And when he can putt, I mean, forget it. We see a lot of guys collapse when they have the lead, right, headed into the final round. Like Min Woo Lee, he was right up there. Min Woo Lee was playing great golf, and then we just see one shot. Min Woo Lee gets affected, and it blows up his entire day. Everything falls apart after that. That happens with a lot of golfers. A lot of golfers, they hit one bad shot and it affects the rest of the round. Where Scotty Scheffler, if he hits one bad shot, it's just on to the next, and then he gets it back. He's just like a total machine out there, and I think him showing no emotions definitely helps. But what a guy for the tour to have, and for him to have the same odds as Rory to win the Masters, I think that's laughable at this point, right? Right now, I definitely think, that course is perfect for Scotty Scheffler, Augusta, and I think it's just gonna be Scheffler and Rahm battling in Augusta. I don't like Rory. I don't bet Rory ever. I don't like Rory. I finally bet him this past week, and he just sucks, misses the cut, and then he blames everything on it's the equipment, it's the driver, I have too many obligations off course, right? He's blaming these off course obligations for playing bad. Meanwhile, he's missed 6 cuts. He's missed half the cuts of the tournaments he's played at the Players Championship, right? He's blaming the driver, so he's tailor-made, and he's like, oh, I don't like this driver. This forgiveness driver, right? That he has these commercials with Colin Morikawa, right? So TaylorMade can't be happy seeing that he's basically talking trash about the driver while TaylorMade's paying him $100-200 million contract, right? So when Scotty Scheffler won with the Stealth 2 or whatever driver, TaylorMade tweeted like, "Congratulations, Scotty Scheffler! Like, loved his new Stealth 2 driver." They're basically like, TaylorMade's basically chirping Rory, their own athlete, like, "Oh, it's good enough for Scotty Scheffler to win, but it's not good enough for you." So it's definitely interesting to see that. But look, I'll bet Scotty Scheffler every single weekend because he's in it every week. The thing, this PGA Twitter or whatever, a lot of PGA bettors, they try to just pick the biggest underdogs, right, to win it, right? So they can say, "Hey, this past weekend I had Justin Rose 135-1, right? If he would have won it, that would be great." But people do that every tournament. They try to pick the diamond in the rough, right? Where they're like, "I'm not going to pick Scotty Scheffler because he's 8-1. Like this, I'm not going to pick John Rahm because he's 8-1, right?" Well, these are the guys winning every tournament seemingly. So I'll gladly take those guys all day. And I mean, somebody bet 300,000 on Scotty Scheffler to win the TPC. They won $3 million at 10-1. That's a great bet, because like I said, it's Scotty Scheffler's a Lamborghini and he's playing against Mercedes right now, right? So I'll probably make a big bet on Scotty Scheffler to win the Masters. Maybe when I'm in Vegas at like 8-1, because I only see his odds lowering at this point, to be honest. I'd have Scotty Scheffler at 6-1, right? Ahead of Rahm right now to win it, but he's 8-1. So I'll definitely probably bet, $5,000 on Scheffler, maybe like $10,000 on Scheffler to win the Masters, because I really think, he can get it done there. And the guy's just a machine, right? So he's been a machine for over a year. So I think it's time to become a Scotty Scheffler fan. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's transition into hockey for a second. We're winding down. 17 games left, or 18, depending upon 16 on the team. The locals clinched a playoff spot. The Bruins, they had a home and away with, or home and home, if you want to call it, with the Red Wings. They lost last night. I love talking to you every Monday because I get the Florida Panther report, number one. But I've been saying this all along, and I really want your opinion here. We all know this. In the first round, whoever the Leafs play, they're going to go 7 games and they're going to lose. And I have said all along that if ever they were able to get through the first round, they would probably be the most dangerous, versus the Bruins. I know the Hurricanes there, and there's some other teams there. It's just a year where the Leafs aren't going to win the first round. You can just chalk it up and move on.
Yeah, I don't like the Leafs. I mean, I think they're soft defensively. They have games where they just don't even show up at all. They do the same thing every year. So the Leafs, I'm not really sold on them, right? I'm not sold on the Devils. The Devils have kind of pulled their play back up from, they were crashing before the All-Star break. We're seeing them kind of, pull back up. They're 7-2-1 their last 10. But, even the Bruins, we're seeing the Bruins start to, fall back a little now. Maybe they're realizing like the regular season, they're 11 points up in the East. I mean, the regular season, the President's Cup, the President's Cup winner hasn't won in a decade, the Stanley Cup. So I think the regular season is not as important as everybody thinks. I know the Panthers are 3 points out of it right now. But the Islanders do have an extra game played. So Panthers have been playing well. They're like 6-3-1 their last 10. They're 19-10 at home, so they're playing well at home. But the Panthers were beating good teams. Like we smoked Tampa, and then we smoked Vegas at home, right? And then we lose overtime to we come back and we beat the Blackhawks in OT. We were down 2-0, came back, beat the Blackhawks in OT. And then we lose in overtime. We're down 2-0 again to the Jets, down 4-2 to the Jets. We come back 4-4, and then we lose in overtime. So the Panthers are beating good teams, but they're losing to, mediocre teams. And I don't care what the Jets record is. They'll always suck to me. So I refuse to give them any credit. But, I think, hopefully the Panthers, can get in there and make the playoffs. Because I definitely think there's a lot of teams crashing right now, like the Lightning, the Penguins, the Rangers. The Rangers are playing great. Now the Rangers have fallen back to earth, right? We're seeing Carolina, play well, but Carolina in the playoffs, they're going to try to win every game 2-1, right? That doesn't work, right? If your goalie has a bad performance, forget it. I think they're just recycling the same old game plan they always have. They kind of remind me of the Islanders the last few years in the playoffs, right? They play tough defense. They hope to score a couple goals here and there, but they rely on their defense to win. I just don't see it happening when the Bruins are a better version of them. But, if the Panthers get that 8th spot, we could see that Panthers-Bruins, first-round series, which would be nice because the Panthers, I think they're 2-2 against the Bruins this year, or maybe 2-1 against them. So that would be an exciting series to watch. And like you said, we've got 17 games. Panthers got 15 games to go. So hopefully we can get on a little run here and make the playoffs. But if not, the season's total failure. So we'll just have to see how we finish the year. But yeah, I'd say. The Bruins are the pretty clear favorite to win the Cup right now. I know in the West you've got the Golden Knights. They just smoked Carolina, but they beat St. Louis last night. I had them last night minus 130, which was a gift against a bad St. Louis team. But the Golden Knights right now and the Stars, two of the weakest. Top two. Golden Knights, Stars, Kings, right? Wild. Kraken, Oilers, Jets, Avalanche are down in 8th place, right? This is two of the weakest, that's pretty weak for the West, right? Like, even though the Avalanche are down in 8th place, I'd still take the Avalanche over, most of those teams. So, I think whoever comes out of the East, I think they're the clear favorite to win the Stanley Cup. But if the Avalanche make the Cup, that'll be a tough one. I just don't think Vegas, Dallas, the Kings, I don't think they're capable of winning the Cup. So I think, if this is the year the Bruins are going to win it, I think this is the year the Bruins need to win it, right? Because this is the weakest West that we've seen in quite some time.
Last question. Does Roger, and they said soon, does Roger just end up being a Jet, or did he try to go back to Green Bay? It seems like Green Bay's like saying, hey, we're all set. We're trying to move on here. We got Jordan Love in tow. We got the draft coming up. We're ready to rip the Band-Aid and move off. Do you think he ends up as a New York Jet?
I'm not sure he ends up as a Jet. I mean, this is what all the talk is and stuff, but none of these people have any sources. I just, for me, I think I'm not even looking at like the team wise, like Aaron Rodgers, like New York seems like the last place that Aaron Rodgers would like to live. I don't know. He seems like that's anti how he is, right? I just don't know. I don't know. Like, does he want to live in New York? I think he definitely wants to play more. I think Vegas would be the perfect spot for him, right? Or even San Francisco. I think obviously we would have seen something happen already, like if it was like that cut and dry with the Packers and the Jets. But the Jets did meet with him, so it's tough. It's really tough to say. In being a Dolphins fan of the AFC East, I don't really want to see Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. Though my wife's a Jets fan, so that would be good for her and her family. But I don't really. If you put Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, like, can they win the Super Bowl? I don't think so. Right? Like, I just don't see them beating Buffalo. Like, I don't know. Like it's just it's a weird. It's like you're putting a. It almost reminds me of Brett Favre with the Vikings, right? You're putting this older QB with a bunch of younger players and stuff. So maybe that would be good for them. Can they win the Super Bowl? I don't really know. It just seems like a short-term rental because I don't know how many more years Aaron Rodgers wants to play for. But it's wild to me that the Jets would say that they're not interested in like a Lamar Jackson who's young, 24 years old, MVP, but they're interested in Aaron Rodgers. I don't really understand that one. But I definitely don't think I think Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay is just does absolutely nothing. Like the Packers haven't done anything to improve this offseason, right? They're not they don't have anybody for him to throw to, stuff like that. So it's tough to see him going back to Green Bay just because you're going to go back to losing the first round of the playoffs, right? So it's just tough to see him going back to Green Bay, and by all accounts and that we're hearing and stuff, the Jets seem to be the team. But one thing I know about the NFL, there's always a surprise out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else came along. So we'll just have to see what happens. I don't really know, so we'll see.
You talked about your Dolphins. They pick up the 50 year with Tua. You get Jalen Ramsey yesterday.
For nothing.
Are you excited about that move?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been the biggest Jalen Ramsey fan because, if he doesn't play on your team, he seems like an ass, right? So I've never been the biggest Jalen Ramsey fan. And somebody yesterday, said, "Oh, well, he's washed up, whatever. He's declining." He just had a career high in every category last year. I think he was a 4th rated DB in the league last year. So he's coming off all career highs. He's like 27 years old still. So it's a great move. I mean, the Dolphins, they gave up a 3rd round draft pick, which if you're looking through Dolphins history, their 3rd round draft picks have been nothing, right? Like, just terrible. So you give up a no-name tight end with, I think, 1 career catch. It's a great move for the Dolphins. It just signals that the Rams are having a fire sale, right? Like 2 seasons ago, you won the Super Bowl, and now you're having a fire sale. So I actually think that it's hard for me to see Matthew Stafford coming back. Is Matthew Stafford going to play again in LA? Because they're not going to be playing for the playoffs, right? So I'm interested to see what they do, at the quarterback position going forward. But it's definitely a great move for the Dolphins. And we've got all these prime-time players. Now the Dolphins have all these big-time players. Can they get Jordan Poyer also? Like, this is the talk. If they got Jalen Ramsey and Jordan Poyer, I mean, that would be a great secondary. So, we'll see what happens. I never put too much faith in the Dolphins, and I don't mind the Dolphins giving away draft picks because, like I said, their draft history is so bad that it doesn't really matter. I mean, they've botched pretty much every chance that they've had in the draft ever. So, I think it's a great move for the Dolphins, and it shows they want to win now. It shows Stephen Ross isn't being cheap. He's not going the cheap route and stuff. I'm happy they picked up Tua's option because, he led the league in passer rating last year. So as long as you can keep Tua healthy, I think the Dolphins will be in business for next year. As long as we get a backup quarterback who's usable, right? Like not Teddy Bridgewater. So, we'll see. But yeah, it's definitely a great move for the Dolphins, I think.
Wheels up on Wednesday. I am jealous as you know what. I can't hope to see a lot of stuff on you guys' timeline in Vegas for opening weekend. As we close here, tell everyone where to find your stuff, your free plays on your website, and your packages for the rest of March Madness, and maybe into April as well.
Yeah, all my packages, as you know, are on my website at beatingthebookie.com, just like it is right here with no G. we're on a nice free play run. We're 34-14 on free plays through the site. I gave out a nice XFL winner last night. I didn't put that on the site, but I just tweeted it out. But yeah, we're doing well, right? NHL is firing, and I'm just looking forward to getting into March Madness. So thanks for having me on. Looking forward to coming on next week, or you never know, maybe in Vegas. So we'll just have to see how it goes.
The one and only Beaten the Bookie, Mr. BDB, our Monday way to start the week. We can't thank you enough. Go follow him. If you're not following myself, follow me at EC Sports Invest. All your followers, I will gladly follow back. Everyone, have a great morning. Enjoy yourselves, and we will see you soon.
See ya.